globalism, this move towards a world state. H.G. Wells and many people have talked about this plan, technocracy, right, or algocracy, ruled by AI algorithm. And I think it's pertinent for people to read George Orwell. I reread 1984 this summer, and I watched the movie for the first time. I think the movie was put out in the 80s or 90s. And what's happening, I mean, because you talk about censorship, I think ultimately what's happening is, I think Orwell knew something. So it wasn't just fiction that he wrote, but somehow he was an insider and he revealed these plans. Because it's weird, because they're literally being implemented right now. Thought crime is being legislated in every country. Here in Mexico, they just proposed this week. They said they shot it down, but it was a proposal to put you in jail for up to 6 years if you created a meme making fun of a politician. We've seen that happen in the U.S. There was that the guy who made a meme of Hillary Clinton.
A meme is a cartoon.
Right, like a meme, like a funny, silly photo that's all over the internet, or even if you make an audio or digitally altered video of a politician, or even of friends or family, and if someone gets offended, they can denounce you, and then you can be investigated and go to jail. So that was proposed in Mexico. So it's under the guise of hate speech. So you see in Australia now, I just read today, in Australia's proposing it, EU, Canada, USA, Brazil. So once you understand the scope of it, and they use different masks.
It reminds me of terrorism in the United States. After 9/11, they passed all these laws. If you can be qualified as a terrorist for anything, for protesting global warming or pesticides or whatever, you're a terrorist. If you can get in, if they can fit you in that classification, then all the laws for a terrorist apply.
That's the same framework. So what you just described is they're building that infrastructure, and what they're trying to do now is make it legal. And so anyone who thinks something, they put their thought out on social media, Facebook, or they say it, and it's heard by smartphone devices that are listening into us, and someone denounces you or the government denounces you. So they're making it law now to where if you think a thought crime, like Orwell said, you can be arrested and put to jail. We're seeing in UK now, which is ground zero. Again, it's Airstrip 1. It's George Orwell was from the UK, and now in the UK, people put wrong thoughts on Facebook, and people have seen videos. The authorities are going to your home. Old people, like elderly people, are getting arrested for thought crime.
In the UK?
Yeah.
Who is making these laws? Because I like to think, even in the end, it's in the United States, it's Congress. These are normal people. They have good intentions. Do they even read what they're signing? Or do they just want to be elected and they'll do what they're told to do? And who's telling them to do it then?
I think pretty much most politicians are bought and paid for. I got my graduate studies in the Geneva School of Diplomacy. And so I was a staff assistant at the EU and the UN for 6 months during that time. And so I was sort of in the belly of the beast, and I got a little glimpse of these people, of diplomats and politicians. And most of them are narcissistic and opportunistic. So they got cushy jobs, well paid. So they get a lot of money, and they're popular in their own mind and status. And that's what pushes the vast majority of them. And so I think there is an entire infrastructure that's global, that's basically running the show. You've got a whole host of financial interests. I refer to them as globalists. So, you've got these factions and groups of globalists that are this transnational financial class. They own most of the key industry, and then they come together at meetings at different times of the year to attempt to coordinate. And then beyond that, there's an entire infrastructure of NGOs, supranational organizations they work through, like the UN, World Economic Forum, BlackRock, the financial system.
Is there someone at the actual top of the food chain, or is it just organically, just because there's so many of these interests that this happens, these thought crime laws? Or is there somebody really like a king at the top of all these, leading all these groups?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, that's the $1 million question. I think it's a grouping. I really like the term a cultocracy, somebody has referred to it. So it's a money class, and they revolve around money and power, and ideology. And I think some of them have been around for centuries. I found an article in Bloomberg a year or two ago, which was talking about some prince in Liechtenstein and how his family, they've owned the land since the year 1200. That's 800 years. And so that wealth has grown and they've maintained power. And so and then I can give you, because I live here in Mexico, I can give you examples of how a lot of the policies, you got the Mexican politicians, but behind them, there are so many interests that come in and give them stacks of policy papers and say, implement this, and they throw the money at you. And then, Rockefeller Foundation.
Well, that reminds me of global warming. A lot of people say 98% of scientists agree in global warming. No, only the 98% that they were chosen to say this because they knew these people would say it.
Yeah, they were bought and paid for. I've interviewed many climate skeptics, scientists, right? And they're bought and paid for. And that green agenda, I was going to give that example here in where I live in Mexico, in 2020 when I returned. I noticed them building out massive public transport, which had not happened before. And I'm wondering, where's this money coming from? They're cutting car lanes to install public transport, and they call this a resilient city. And I'm like, well, I don't know, what is this resilient city? And I found the actual documents from the government, and it says resilient cities. It's a project that's global, that's financed by the Rockefeller Foundation. I have the actual documents. It shows that the Rockefeller Foundation was financing the build out. And is this, as you mentioned, global warming is the green agenda. So they're cutting car lanes and building public transport because they want to take away our freedom, our cars,
transportation,
which is our freedom
to
move. And they just introduced 3 years ago. We didn't have this in Mexico before. 3 years ago, vehicle emissions like you're used to in the U.S. and elsewhere. And now, if your car doesn't pass emissions, I already know Mexicans that this has happened to. Their car didn't pass the emissions test, so now their car is illegal. So they can't. Their car has been taken away now by the government, and then they don't. And it's a big city, and you can't. So now you got to spend hours and hours. If you have a car, it'll take you less than an hour to get to where you need to. But now, if it's taken away, it's going to take you 2 or 3 hours in one direction instead of less than 60 minutes. Imagine that impact.
I try to focus on solutions, and I like your attitude on that too. One of when I think about solutions is there are people that will still believe it's all in the good name of preventing pollution and climate change. Oh, it's a good thing that we're getting rid of our cars. How do you get those people to just think different so they get it before it's too late? Maybe it's too late anyhow and they can't do anything, but at least they can see it coming more. They can think better.
It's really difficult. I mean, this is one of the reasons that we do what we do, is just try to make noise. I mean, we could look at the wealthy again, because really what climate change is, or global warming, the theory, I call it's a rebranding of eugenics in a way. And I call it neo-feudalism, because what is it ultimately doing? They're also now talking about a carbon score or carbon social credit system, which is going to tax you for your energy use. And what happens here? It's neo-feudalism again. Feudalism.
Not
right.
Just tax you, but also give you bonuses, checks, if you behave, if you say the right thing, if you buy the right car, if you, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, with your digital currency, then you could control that.
Yeah, and thanks to the capitalist system, it's not perfect, but then it also concentrates into monopoly capitalism. So you could either have communism or monopoly capitalism, which are pretty much the same in their effects. And in this industrialization, we've developed a middle class, so a whole host of people can be prosperous, and so they want to bring us back to the two-class system where it's rich and poor. And then now think about this global warming, where they're going to have the carbon system, and if you want to buy more meat or use more gasoline or buy more airplane travel tickets, you're going to have to pay higher carbon tax fees. For the middle class, it'll become untenable, which will mean I won't be able to travel or eat as much meat as I want. But the wealthy, the Al Gores, they will continue life as normal because they can just pay the carbon taxes. And then so my answer to you is like, well, why does they tell us the sea is rising? Why does, President, Obama and Al Gore and Bill Gates have more than one, multiple homes, and some of them right on the coast?
Hmm.
And they're flying jets, and they have I don't know how many cars. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
So let's talk about the information. Like you say, it's hard to change people's minds, but at least you and I can try to do what we do. But yet you can get censored on the internet if they find you and don't like you. So what is the Disinformation Governance Board?
Right. So that's what happened. So going back to the war question, so they've started censoring, because of the Ukraine war. So if you have a different perspective on you, I think it's whatever war at the moment, right? Previously, it would have been, the wars in the Middle East. Now Ukraine is the thing. And then, in a few years, if you start talking about the next war, that you'll be, the censors will come down hard on you, as well as COVID. COVID was the big one. So I got taken off of Patreon in 2021 because of guests, doctors that I had criticizing.
So when you say taken off, tell me exactly what that means. Like you get an email, like you will take this episode off or lose your account.
Right. So what happened was I received, it's a longer backstory. So in 2020, I interviewed Dr. Francis Boyle, who just passed away earlier this year. And that interview exploded. It went viral, pun intended, where he wrote the law on biological weapons of 1989. And he said COVID was an offensive biological warfare weapon. And that interview, 300,000 views on YouTube. It was taken down by YouTube. And then the Associated Press, a year later, did a hit piece on him mentioning my podcast, Geopolitics Empire. And that Associated Press article was co-written by Atlantic Council, which is effectively NATO's think tank, NATO. And so you have to understand the military and intelligence are linked with the media and the big tech platforms. In fact, I think most of the big tech platforms, if you ask me, came out of DARPA. Google was seed funded by DARPA, the military industrial complex. Bezos' grandfather worked at DARPA, of Amazon. Facebook was a DARPA project. And so just to get back to the point, so that in 2001, about that time that AP article came out, that same week or the following week is when Patreon sent me a message, and they said that, so they cited two specific interviews. One that I did with Dr. Mark Circus, who's like an alternative health doctor. He's down in Brazil. And Robin Monotti, who's this Italian architect, film producer, and he speaks out against a lot of this stuff. And Patreon said, you have to delete from the entire internet, from your YouTube, from your website, from Apple, from Spotify, from everywhere, these two interviews. So they froze my Patreon account, and they said, we'll unfreeze it if you delete these from the entire internet. And then, first of all, I'm like, on the face of it, no, I'm not going to censor myself. And number two, what's to stop them tomorrow saying, okay, delete 10 more, and then 10 more, and delete all of your podcasts? I'm like, you guys are crazy. And so I said no, and they kept it frozen, Patreon. And then I eventually deleted the account because...
And they probably didn't make this up themselves.
They cited CDs because of CDC and WHO, which is why I'm, again, talking earlier about world government and globalism. So they said because the WHO and CDC say so, you can't criticize their view on COVID. So
what I mean is, I'm sure that was discrimination because you could go find other Patreon members talking about the same stuff. It wasn't their idea. Somebody told them to wipe the whole thing, because why would they care what's on YouTube and why would they care at all? Is that their standard policy, or was it discrimination towards you?
Well, this is getting to the Disinformation Governance Board. And so I think that when someone, I guess I've done a pretty good job where someone is hitting the target or reaches a certain threshold, they're like, okay, get that. Even the movie They Live, like I've got one that can see. The next year, the Department of Homeland Security, Nina Yankowicz, if you recall her, she rolled out the Disinformation Governance Board, which was effectively going to be a Ministry of Truth. It fell through.
This is the first I heard that term when I was researching you, this Disinformation Governance Board. I've never heard of it before. It's already in place.
No, so it didn't succeed because there was backlash, and then later a guy called Mike Benz, who's got this Freedom Foundation, who deals with this sort of stuff. Some of the reports that he put out, I pieced together what really happened. So that same week, what are the chances that April 2022, I forget the date, DHS attempts to establish the Ministry of Truth called the Disinformation Governance Board that same week. And, 3 months before that, I had made a new website with a membership option, and I had linked PayPal and Stripe for payments. And they roll out Disinformation Governance Board. I get an email, PayPal, and then Mint Press News, which is another anti-war publication, leftist. I'm not a leftist. I'm more of a conservative, but I don't even identify with the right anymore.
I've seen your website. You hang out with the most respectful people around the world. You're not a quack. You're not a conspiracy guy.
Well, I talk to left, to right, beyond, and so it was Mint Press News, Consortium News, which was founded, I forget his name, was it Robert Perry? So old school 1980s journalist who did Iran-Contra. And so we got banned from PayPal. And then Kim Iverson and Matt Taibbi actually reported on our deplatforming. People can check the archives for that. And I actually sent Kim Iverson the screenshot while she was at the Hill still, and it showed my name and Geopolitics. So
did you get it back? Do you get your PayPal back?
No, because there's no avenue for me to do it. And I mean, I even called PayPal. I'm like, can you close my account? It's frozen. I can't use it. It's like, no, I can't even close my account.
Oh, it's hard to get to PayPal anyhow. It's a bot. I mean, getting someone on the phone.
I got to a person. I got them on the phone. They said, I can't close your account. It has to remain frozen. And so I realized what happened was DHS also has another agency called CISA.
What's DHS? Department of
Homeland Security.
Okay.
Which is effectively, like, it shouldn't even exist. It was created because of 9/11, and it's effectively like a Nazi Gestapo Stasi agency. It goes back to what you're saying about terrorism. It's they're creating the infrastructure now to anyone who questions the government can be labeled a terrorist and renditioned, or in this new world of digital dictatorship. I've had a great guest on, Jewish historian Edwin Black, who wrote the book on IBM. I forget the title. It's IBM and the Holocaust, how IBM created the first paper computer for Nazi Germany to classify. And he calls it the algorithm ghetto. So in this digital ghetto, they may not even need to send troops to your door. They just, once everything is digital, they just press a button and you're debanked. You can't buy food, you can't work, you can't renew your driver's license, your passport, you can't do anything. But I forget now where we were going with it. Oh, so I want to mention the DHS. They created CISA, and in the documents from Mike Benz, it says that CISA now says that if
what's CISA?
I forget the exact. I can pull it up real quick.
CESA.
CISA. It's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's a component of the DH.
And it sounds so perfect and wonderful and needed and required and safe. And why wouldn't you want security, right? It's always, if the acronym seems too wonderful and safe and secure, question it. That's my motto, is question.
Well,
it's something that's...
It's friendly fascism. So there have been authors, social scientists decades ago who talked about this is what's coming. Aldous Huxley of Brave New World said, it's not going to be Orwell's boot stomping on a face forever. It's going to be coming with so if fascism comes to America, it comes wrapped in the flag, it comes with a smiley face. And so CISA says now that if you are spreading disinformation, could even be malinformation, so information that is true but inconvenient for the government, you are now attacking, because the cyber infrastructure is now part of the government, they say. So you're now attacking the cyber infrastructure, which means you're attacking the government now for, again, thought crime. They actually say you're a non-kinetic threat. And that's, I think, why then CISA, DHS told PayPal, shut these accounts down.
Why are you even a threat anyhow? If it seems to me most people that know we know already know it, and the people that don't, like some of my family, for example, it's perfect because They're the complete opposite, and they're test litmus for me on war. Like, do they believe what the standard thing is? Yes. Can I change their mind? No. Can I influence them? It's tough. It doesn't matter what I say anyhow. So why bother censoring us in the first place?
Well, like I said earlier, I think some of us hit a certain threshold. So, like when my Boyle video gets 300,000 views, and I think so that was taken down. And then the next day, my face was on the front page of Alex Jones's InfoWars, and he was doing a play-by-play of that interview. And then it was reposted on a bunch of alternative media platforms, and I think it was seen by millions. So you get what I'm saying? Once you hit that threshold, it's like, okay, get him. But, in your case,
pretend you have freedom of speech. If they shut me down too early, I'll realize, oh, I don't have freedom of speech. Make them think you have freedom of speech until you get too big. And those are smaller numbers, and nobody will miss them really, like a mosquito. Like, we'll just swat them. And
it's a surgical operation. I mean, another great example, my very first podcast. So I started Geopolitics and Empire in 2015. But in 2012, really, I started the old YouTube channel called Dissident Thinker. That's when I started interviewing former CIA, people like that. And then by 2015, 3 years later, I sort of formalized it into Geopolitics and Empire. And that old channel is still linked. If people go to Geopolitics and Empire on YouTube, they'll see Dissident Thinker, and they can see my old original interviews. By the way, if you type in Geopolitics and Empire to the Google search, I'm blacklisted. It's another example. So if you type in Geopolitics and Empire in Google search, you won't find almost anything. But in any other search, you'll get my website at the top and everything else. So my very first interview in 2012 was Corporal Jesse Thorson, I think it was his name. And he was famous because, he supported the Ron Paul candidacy at the time. I had Ron Paul on my podcast. I've met him. And Thorson was a U.S. military veteran, okay? And so and this is way back like 2010s. So he started to question the official narrative of 9/11. But he's not posting anything publicly, but he's using big tech like Facebook. And so he's privately messaging friends and family about his theories on 9/11, questioning the narrative. There's a video of this somewhere where someone rings on his door. I think he's not wearing a shirt. He opens the door, and it's U.S. government authorities with no warrant, nothing. I don't think they have like a sheriff and police in a black car or something. They rendition him. Like, this is America. He didn't do anything wrong. They don't have a warrant. They just take, like, this is like what happens in Russia or China or, totalitarian.
They're not the police. It's not the sheriff wearing a sheriff's badge. These are probably plain clothes.
Yeah, some sort of weird unit of some totalitarian, Stasi agency of the U.S. And so they throw him in the car and they send him, they try to put him in a mental asylum. And then, so this was like way back 2012. And then the lawyer at the time, who I later became a huge fan of, who's been on my podcast, his name is John Whitehead of Rutherford Institute. So John Whitehead was a lawyer, managed to get him out and get him free. And this was completely unconstitutional. So I think what happened here is, going back to our earlier point, he's a military veteran. And as you were saying earlier, most of America venerates, worships war and soldiers, right? Because they're soldiers. They put their life on the line for our country. So what soldiers say, we must listen to them. Pat Tillman. I was a huge fan of Pat Tillman. You remember Pat Tillman? He was a football player, becoming very successful, I think, in college football and I think NFL. When 9/11 happened, he was patriotic and he signed up and he went to Afghanistan. And then he started to see that it was not what they were telling us. Mm-hmm. And he somehow died from friendly fire, conveniently. And there was a documentary made about this.
So on the 9/11, I was supposed to fly the day it happened. And I was already stuck in Florida. I was supposed to fly home and I couldn't. I was one of the first people to fly. And what tipped me off that same day was the way the news was reporting it as if they already knew stuff that they couldn't have known unless they did investigate, unless something was fed to them. They didn't have time they should have just said that, oh my gosh, a plane hit the tower. Not, there's only one person that could have done this, Osama bin Laden. Like, how do you know that? 10 seconds later. And I started questioning it right away. But I'm fascinated why it took till just now. It seems like on the Carl Tuckerson show, he's talking about 9/11, like it's okay to talk about, like people are interested in it. Why now is this all of a sudden in the news again?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. And there are clips of Tucker Carlson where people asked him like 10, 15 years ago, and he scoffed at the idea of questioning. And now,
And now all of a sudden he's talking about it's like, look at me, I'm smart, and I'm gonna call, BS on this. Like, and then the same thing with global warming. All of a sudden it's in the news and chemtrails, all these conspiracies that they still don't admit something's true, but I'm kind of like, something's going on here. Like, why are they plugging all the conspiracies now all of a sudden? Like trying to change the way people think almost or something.
yeah, I don't know if you have further insights on that. I think part of it is the zeitgeist has changed, and so maybe Tucker has genuinely changed his mind. Also, riding this new wave of how things have changed, that affects your bottom line. Um, but also, some of it is the people in power. I feel they don't have much to fear because there's nothing we can really do. So we can sort of keep talking about this stuff. You look at JFK. I mean, people have. I think most of us know that
Yeah.
it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. It was clearly deep state, probably CIA and other interests involved. And but well, we've never gotten to the bottom of it. So we can just
Well,
keep
if we
talking
back
about it.
up, let's stay on 9/11, backing up to when it happened, like you say, where this guy got arrested because he spoke about it. And a week later, actually, I had a friend who was he was an international banker visiting us, and we asked him what his opinion is. Like, we can't talk about that. Like, he was looking around the room, like, no, we're not talking about that. Why now are they not afraid? But back then they were. Do you think?
Well, because I think they've gotten away with it. So now you can sort of, and then this stuff that's coming out is maybe the term limited hangout. So some
What's limited
information,
hangout?
right? So that's like where um, limited hangout. It's like somebody who reveals information, but they're basically working for the same system, the government. So they pretend to be, let's say, a whistleblower or a dissident, and but they reveal only fifty
Oh, that's
percent
clever.
of the information. So
And then they throw in there, oh, in this bit, it's not true. So they preemptively have convinced you when you hear that part, it's not, it's, I'm telling you, I'm the insider. That part's made up. And that's the part you really need to hear, probably.
yeah, so they can deflect or steer the truth movement and effectively diffuse it in that way. And then, and then on top of that, I think they're preparing further such events in the coming years for us. And so, every time a new event happens, the memories of the old events, as we get further away from it, it sort of just fades into the past. Like JFK,
Coming back
9/11.
to the solutions again, as if there would be any, as if they wouldn't do what they want to do anyhow, even if everybody became instantly knowledgeable about, it's an inside job, and that's not true. But you don't seem to have anything better than I do in terms of just sharing what you know with people.
Yeah, I mean, I ask my guests the same thing, and one is trying to raise as much hell as possible, as much awareness. One thing that sort of helped with COVID that I noticed was a lot of the stuff that happened, I was able to successfully, precisely predict because I knew that it was a game plan, it was planned. I had said in March or April of 2020 that COVID was about bringing in global algocracy. So
What's that algocracy?
it's a rule. Algocracy means rule by AI or algorithm. And I was reading a paper by Nick Bostrom who proposed that we need to have a global totalitarian world government surveillance state run by AI, artificial intelligence, an algorithm, because people, you can't confide in people. And so this can solve all our problems. And I read that at the time. And then you saw COVID was attempting to bring in QR codes, digital IDs, digital passports. And fast forward now, in the last few months, Joe Rogan interviewed Mark Andreessen and a lot of these tech guys. And then you hear Joe Rogan specifically saying, yeah, we should have rule by AI, rule by algorithm. And now they're bringing in digital IDs. And UK just mandated you cannot work if you don't have digital ID. That's like a COVID. COVID, you could not work if you didn't have the digital COVID ID.
So I kind of respect Joe. I'm always a little bit questionable about someone who's that big because he's got to be influenced or careful or they'll shut him down. But sounds like you're saying he's part of the system. He's doing what they tell him to do in that way, or his opinion seems to match with what they prefer.
So I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. A lot of people in the conspiracy world are like black and white. They just, it's, oh, he's a conspiracy agent. And it's like, no, like at the end of the day, we're humans. Things are nuanced. We have different interests. And I think it's more, and then he's influenced by his guests' ideas, and he hears that idea and he's like, maybe that's not such a bad idea. And so, but I think the system has boosted him. So again, you can't deny agency to all of these people like Tucker Carlson.
In Joe's defense, because I've done it, we're live or we're recording a podcast. I'm not editing it. I'm not going to cut it. That was my thought at the time, right? And later I think about it more and I changed my mind, and people are stuck on my first thing I said, like, you know what? I have more time to think about it. And no, I think that's wrong now.
Yeah. People change their minds, but also I think the system boosts the people.
The algorithm does. The algorithm's going to, if they like the idea, they're going to plug it too.
Right, or that platform, and then the doors will open for him to have guests. So, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, limited hangout. You can't have all propaganda. Joe Rogan can't have all of his guests as propaganda. So it's a mix. You have like good guests who tell you good things, and then another guest.
He's got the comedians, the actors, like Lionel Richie was on the show last week.
Yeah, so it'll be a rotation. Again, a limited hangout idea that people are going to immediately see through. So you got to be authentic. And so I think that's how it's sort of managed.
The AI algorithm, just this week, I became aware of what you're talking about. I use it for editing, blogs and stuff, just grammar and stuff. What I was creating a blog on is what the three things to me that made me question global warming, because I used to believe in it. Like I was a believer. And then finally one day I'm like, why are so many people, why is it in the news? Why does anybody care? Nobody does the right thing all the time that much, unless there's another reason. So I wrote about the three things that really made me think better, and I'm just having chat edited for grammar. It starts adding buts, and correcting everything I say or making it, this is what you say, Daniel, but this is actually more true. I'm like, that's not what I asked you to do, and what is going on here? And what I noticed when it was doing its little editing is, it'll chat, GBT will say thinking, and it flashed for a moment, accuracy check. And it did all that, but accuracy checking. So I asked it, what's accuracy checking? Can you tell me, like, is there a document on what you just did? And no. I'm like, well, who decides? Like, how did you decide to add all that stuff to what did it even ask for? And that kind of irritated me.
This is the first time I heard something like that. And I haven't used those platforms yet. I've only used Gemini I'll upload a transcript of one of my podcasts and ask it to summarize. Now I'm going to look at it twice.
So the great thing though, is one of the things that changed my mind was actually downloaded the temperature data from an actual weather station. And I found one that went back 100 years every day of the week. And I didn't just plot the highest temperature, I plotted the lowest daily and the average. And I gave that to chat as part of it was part of my blog. And the nice thing was chat literally agreed with me. It said, you are right. In that city, it is not getting hotter. And this was Phoenix, Arizona, by the way, which everyone says, oh, it's getting hot. And, Phoenix is hot. But that does not mean that it can't coincide with the climate change narrative because you need to spatially average and homogenize data from around the world. Are you serious? Artificial intelligence is telling me it's not getting hotter in this city, but that doesn't mean that global warming doesn't exist. I'm like, and we should instead average every city, which can't be done because there's not. It wasn't even logical, and it's trying to hammer this idea down my throat. Though I'm like, wow, yeah, we are exactly what you're talking about is going to happen because people are they use AI all the time to learn stuff, and they're not going to realize that they're being manipulated. They're being told. It's kind of like you were saying to get this level with your show. If you're not big enough, asking the big enough questions, they're not going to bother you with the truth information. But if you really start hitting the nerves, they're gonna feed you what they want to feed you, make you want to believe and you think it's AI is smart.
Well, yeah, and Eric Schmidt of Google said there's a clip of him 10, 15 years ago. He said their goal, I think they've been working on this chat GPT stuff for decades. This has been planned long ago. And because how is it you go look at the video he said 15 years ago and here we are now. This means they're steering us towards their plans and for this totalitarian dystopia. And he said, we eventually want, because you had the Google search engine where you type in queries and you get a whole host of responses, and then you as a critical thinker put those together and come to the conclusion, which I like having that versus what we have now where you only get one answer. You type in ChatGPT, it gives you one answer. Like you said, show me the sources. No, this is the one correct answer. And Eric Schmidt said, our goal is to eventually have where you type into the search your one question and you get the one answer. But then it's like, according to whom? According to them. And it could be false. And
there's no thinking. There's no thought. Like in a library, you could go down, walk the library, find the topic, climate change, and at least right next to the one that said, we're going to die from climate change, you see the alternative viewpoint. Climate change is a hoax. You'd see them side by side, those books. And you could pull them both off the shelf and read both of them. And more if you wanted more. You can't do that if you get the one answer from ChatGPT.
No, and just, as my example, I mean, I was called crazy conspiracy theorist. I taught high school, university. And at university, they gave me a course called, because I'm an international relations graduate, and so that was my field. And they gave me a course called Environment and International Relations. So what do you think I did? So if you go to virtually any university class, you talk about terrorism. They gave me a course to teach on 9/11, and I was generally given the liberty to form my own syllabus and do my own thing, which was great. And if you go to any university, they're going to tell you 9/11, the official story. They're going to tell you climate change, the official narrative. But what should a real professor do, real student, real academic? What did I do? So environment and international relations, we spent one session, I forget how long each session was, 1 or 2 or 3 hours, looking at the official narrative of climate change. The next session, we looked at the opposite, the skeptic narrative. Mm-hmm. And we debated, and I'm not forcing it down your throats, students. I'm like giving you both perspectives. And Al Gore actually came to our campus here in Mexico 10 years ago, and they had more than 10 years ago. They had to pay him $200,000, and all of the questions you would ask Gore had to go through a filter. They had to be scripted. You couldn't spontaneously ask him about some of these tough points you're bringing up. And in my class, I Skyped in for free from UK Lord Christopher Monckton, who's like the anti-Al Gore. And he spoke to us midnight UK for free for 2 hours. You don't have to pay him. And I had another good example, Piers Corbyn, who's the brother of Jeremy Corbyn, the politician in UK. And Piers Corbyn is an astrophysicist, I think, scientist. And he's got a service called Weather Action, where he predicts the weather based on his thesis, which he says global warming is bunk. And he says the climate cycle is natural. It's driven by the sun. So solar and lunar cycles are what principle.
Sunspot activity was the other thing that changed my way of thinking. I'm like, oh, I'd never realized that the sun has burst. It's not a constant glowing ball, but it has like bursts, like pops and whatnot. I'm like, oh. And over like 20, 30, 50, 1,000 years too, not just day to day.
Yeah. And so, what does the scientist do? I tested his hypothesis. So I've interviewed him. And so I purchased his weather action report. This was like back in 2013 or something when I was teaching that course. And I'm like, I'm going to test his thesis. They tell us we are the cause of global warming. He says, no, it's the sun and the moon and the natural causes. And supposedly his weather action, many farmers subscribe to his weather action service because he predicts months ahead of time accurately the weather, right? But the global warmingists don't. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to check this guy's theory. So it was like January. I bought his January report, 2013. I've got this somewhere on files. And, I remember at the time, I distinctly remember some of the things. He said, like March 25th, I may have bought it in late January, February. And he said, March 25th, you're going to see historic, massive floods and storms in the American Midwest, Iowa, I don't remember. And I'm like, okay, that's what the report says. And I'm teaching this course. And I kid you not, I couldn't believe it. To the day, March 25th, it was like NBC News, mainstream news, historic flooding. And so his thesis was proven correct. How are you going to tell me now? Because he's being guided by the theory that it's the solar lunar cycle. He predicted the weather. To the day, it came true. Now, tell me global warming, is true. Get out of here.
Well, also they changed it from global warming to climate change when they realized that it's not getting hotter fast enough. It's been 20 years. We haven't got to the temperature it was supposed to warm to, so we better change the title from global warming to climate change. And plus, now we can blame even if it gets colder on CO2. And how's that possible? Well, we can do it now because it's all climate change.
And it goes back to what we're talking about. It's Orwell. 2 + 2 = 5. We've always been at war with Eurasia.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Going back to ChatGPT, I've done this. If you tell it, look, it doesn't make sense. How can the CO2 make it get warmer? Okay, even if I buy that lie, it can't also make it get colder. It'll come up with a complex explanation that you'd have to be a smart guy and spend a day breaking it down and assuming it's false to begin with and asking ChatGPT to defend it to the point where you can, otherwise, on face value, it sounds like science. And the average person might believe it, will believe it. They do believe it.
And there's great examples of this very thing in any other area. We're talking about 9/11. Go back to Al Qaeda. This is a crazy example. So in the 1980s, Hillary Clinton admitted this. Again, who's crazy here? So 1980s, the U.S. government, CIA, Pentagon, they armed and trained the Mujahideen, what became Al Qaeda, and Osama bin Laden was an asset of the U.S.
And I think that was because, for those not old enough remembering it, our idea is always is we want to help another country, right? The Al Qaeda, we were helping the Al Qaeda because there was some other country that we wanted.
The Soviets were in Afghanistan, right? So armed them against the Soviets, but. So, okay, but this goes back to Orwell, where, in the totalitarian world of 1984, Airstrip 1 and INGSOC, Big Brother is out there, this dark resistance organization that doesn't really exist. And then this week we're fighting Eurasia, and East Asia is our ally and Eurasia is our enemy. And then the next week it's like, now we're fighting East Asia and Eurasia is our ally and East Asia.
Like, there's nothing else going on in the world anywhere. No other terrorism or dictatorship. It's always this one little area. Like, it's the only part that there's a problem, right, in the news.
Yeah, and then the propaganda is like, no, we've always been fighting China. Russia's been our friend, but wait, we were fighting them last month. No. And so with Al Qaeda in 1980s, they're our friends. 1990s, 2000s, Al Qaeda is our enemy, and then in the 2010s. Al Qaeda is our friend again because there's the Defense Intelligence Agency document from 2012 that was declassified, and even Michael Flynn, formerly of DIA, said that document that the U.S., European countries, Turkey, Saudi are intentionally supporting Al Qaeda and ISIS. So now they're our friends again, and the current president of Syria, al-Sharaa, is former Al Qaeda, and there was a clip that leaked It was a speech given a few months ago from I think an American diplomat. I mean, this is shocking. It reveals it all. This American diplomat said he was approached by British intelligence, someone from British government, and they said, "Can you take this guy Al-Shara, who's Al Qaeda, who attacked American soldiers in Iraq and whatever, Al Qaeda? Can you remake him into a suit, into a politician, like a palatable politician, to be the president of Syria?" And he spoke at the UN recently, this Al Qaeda president of Syria, and General Petraeus, former CIA director, recently interviewed him on stage, warmly welcoming him. And it's like, wait a minute, he's Al Qaeda, but now he's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's
So back to the solutions. I know it's tough. Well, let's imagine for a moment if everybody did suddenly become aware. Suddenly we're able to tell disinformation from fact, and they knew, climate change is a lie, that war is a lie, et cetera, et cetera. Is there anything we could still do about it, or would they just shove it down our throat? Anyhow.
Oh, I think there's a number of things. I just forgot my earlier point where when I was talking about COVID in 2020 and being able to predict things, some of my Mexican friends looked at me like I was crazy, saying it was all a fraud to bring in digital controls. And this was here in Mexico before they told us there was a red button that we're going to push. And the governor here in Mexico was like coming out, threatening us. And, this was before they did the lockdown. They were like, we're thinking of pressing the button because of, all the pandemic. So we're not doing it today.
What is the button going to do?
It was like this button for lockdown to tell people to wear masks, and I told all my friends, like, look, they're gonna press the button, they're gonna lock down, they're gonna introduce COVID passport, they're gonna do all. So my friends initially were like, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, and then after the year we went through that, everything that I said that they were gonna do, they did, and then my friends were like, okay, you're not so crazy anymore, because how can you predict all of this to the T? Mm-hmm. And so I think this is one strong point, and trying to convince people, if we can, if you read the books, you go through all this data, you analyze, if we correctly assess what's going on and can forecast the future, that will wake a lot of people up, I think. And then what can we do? Just not complying. It's, critical mass. If you can get a critical mass not to comply with what's going on.
So if you predict stuff and they don't censor you and shut you down, it would be like I'm playing football and all of a sudden the other team knows my plans, my plan. You're going to have to change your plan or wait for a new generation of people to come out. Maybe you wait 20 or 100 years and then just bring the whole thing back just as if you didn't skip a beat. So maybe the stuff is good that, the helpful that we do, and that, like what you did, predict it, because if people start following your predictions, like the stock market, then it changes the market.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anyone say it like you have, and I think that's a great way of fleshing that out. And I could give local examples of COVID where here in Mexico City, 25 million people, whatever, huge, massive, and the mayor of Mexico City said at the time, I think it was like 2020. Just like they tried in many parts of the world, some places they succeeded, they had greater success, and others they didn't. So the mayor said, if you want to enter into any pharmacy or shop or whatever, you have to scan the QR code at the entrance to enter. And so what happened? Because it's a massive city, it's just untenable, right? People live on the poverty line. They have to go to work. They cannot not work. It's
your phone's not working. It's not charged. The camera's broken, whatever.
And it's like 25 million people. It's like, good luck. They're like, screw you. I have to eat today, but it's for your public health. We're starving you to death, right? Like in China, people were welded shut, starving to death in their apartments. It's for your health. We're starving you to death, But anyways, people just for a week didn't comply, didn't care about the QR codes, and then the mayor comes out and is like, "Okay, just kidding. We're taking that requirement away that nobody obeyed."
They made it sound like it was their idea, and it was only because of non-compliance, as you say.
Right, and so I think that's one example. So going forward, it would be this sort of idea, just not complying with their systems, not buying from the big corporate worlds, pulling away, finding alternatives. That using cash. Just these types of things, petitioning, works. I mean, here's a horrible example. I'll give you another example from Mexico. Just this morning, yesterday, I saw in some part of Mexico, in a small town, there was a citizen. He had a business. He was a worker. He was a good citizen. He was trying to improve his community. And you got the roads, and the roads got potholes, and there's no sidewalks. And he's like filming, and he's constantly making noise, petitioning the government, getting the people together to get the government to do what it's supposed to do. And so he was filming. There's actual video. He's filming the potholes, and so it's unfortunately this is how it is in Mexico. But he's a good example of what we should do: organize, petition, make a lot of noise, which then forces the government or these forces to react. But unfortunately, what happened? Two hitmen, sicarios, on a motorcycle passed by, and while he's filming his spiel, they shoot him. I think he might still be alive, but then he falls on the floor. The video, his camera's still recording. He's telling his wife, he's like, "Take care of my children. I love you. I'm dying right now." But then I read the article, and he's like, "This damn government, and because he says they petitioned the local mayor who wasn't doing anything. So basically, I think what happened was because the narcos and the government are the same. The mayor probably told the cartels, "Hey, take this guy out. He's making too much noise." Which means what he was doing was effective. Now, if enough people were like this, okay, it's just like it's kind of like my case, right? But if there's 5 or 10, they can't shoot all 100 people in the village,
If
right?
everybody, so it makes me think of your content that was taken down from Patreon, YouTube, and PayPal. If you copied and pasted that onto every website and blog in the world, it'd be out there because they're not going to take down every single website.
Yeah, I mean and I mean, there's unfortunately again, at my vantage point here in Mexico, there's another Mexican young man. He worked hard 4 years, made a successful restaurant business, and the cartels they ask you basically to become a slave, give all of your profits to them every month, like a mafia tax, or we're going to kill you. And he made a video. He said, "I unfortunately have to shut down. I'm still in shock. They're sending me extortion attempts. I'm afraid the sicario is going to come and shoot up my customers and kill me. So I'm going to shut my business down."
It's sad because I like to think people are good, and it's almost like I wonder if it's hopeless sometimes because you have all these corrupt politicians, and they're not the Rockefellers. I mean, they're probably getting paid by the Rockefellers, but they could say no.
Yeah, virtually none are saying no. And and just to finish that point, the one thing that he said, he's like, "I know many of you listening, other Mexicans who have businesses, are going through the same situation." And he says the government doesn't care. They know about this problem. They're complicit. And he said, "But if more of you speak out and generate noise in the public sphere, plus denunciations and petitions with the different government institutions, if so now there's not enough noise. But if you generate enough noise, that will then force the government into
I'm pretending
reacting."
I'm the governor. It's not that I'm corrupt. I just have I'm a narcissist. I have my own interest in mind. If enough people complain, I just look bad. So I got to go to my boss, who's the Rockefeller, who haven't got, "Look,
Or
man,
whoever.
yeah, look, man, you got it. I can't do it. Can we do something different
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
I save face? You need me to save face because otherwise I'm not your face, right?"
Yeah, it's pretty much. So I think that's one thing we can do, whether it's to buy time or just
Thanks so much, Hrvoje. Is that how you say your name?
Hrvoje, Hrvoje.
Tell listeners about your site, the Geopolitics and Empire Podcast, and the links will be in my show notes for this episode. But tell us about what you do and your.
Yeah, so I've been for a decade. It was mostly a hobby, a moonlighting project while I was teaching, and in the last year and a half, I've been doing it full time, which has been fun. And we're close to 600 interviews that I've conducted. Geopoliticsandempire.com, and then there's geopoliticsandempire.substack.com. I'm active on the Telegram, on X, on many video platforms, and elsewhere. And then there's a paid option where I do a weekly analysis where I try to summarize world events in 1 hour a week, and so in video, audio, and written format. So that's for paid subscribers. And then I do off the record Zoom calls with supporters, like whoever wants to join every week or 2 or 3, just to sort of shoot the breeze on world events. And yeah, so basically putting out, continuing to do interviews and put out that podcast.
Is there anything I haven't asked you or we haven't talked about you think is real critical for that you'd like to add?
Well, we touched on some of the core themes, as you said. The green agenda is coming at us. The wars now, they're agitating against Russia, so it seems like, and it seems like they're going to go and attack Iran and Russia, which could lead to. I think we might have a few years. Some of my guests say it's going to, closer to 2030. So that's going to be a problem. And then the biggest thing I think is whether it's war or some type of pandemic quote event or a cyber event, they will use any and all of those pretexts to take away our civil liberties. Take away free speech rights, implement digital ID. And so I think people have to understand it's not about left or right anymore. We've seen under the left Biden administration them
Oh, I quit
implement.
voting in the United
Right.
States. So here's how bad I've done the ridiculous, naive things. I voted for Al Gore, believed in climate change. Then I voted for Bush Jr. I actually voted for Bush Sr. I've been around the block and I came to conclusion like you're saying. I'm being played by both ends. And if I go libertarian or green, I'm still in a game it's a game.
Yeah, and then like I said, the Biden was bringing in that, and now under Trump, they're furthering, you know, um, attacks on free speech and police. And same thing here in Mexico. We've got three parties. I didn't vote
So
because
not voting, I get beat up because like my family just doesn't get it. They're like, it's your right to vote. I'm like, what do you mean right to vote? What does that mean? Like I need to vote for one of these two candidates? That's not really that doesn't sound much opportunity, much righteousness. So I don't vote.
yeah, my reaction is like if you realize it's a simulation, the voting process, it's a simulacra, it's a lie, and so for me to vote in my own conscience is I'm participating in a lie. I'm,
Exactly.
I'm a fraud, and I'm not going to go against my own. I'm a liar. I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to participate. I'm going to
Yeah.
be stand for truth and justice.
It would call the kettle black if nobody voted and like, well then let's say that you have two candidates and they vote for each other. They vote for themselves. So they got three votes to count, three votes. You won. The jig will be up. Nobody did actually vote you in.
And I think in some countries you're starting to see this increasing trend of less. And then why in some countries, I think it's Australia and some places in Central America, you're if you don't vote, you get a fine. I'd pay
There you
the
go.
fine.
That's their fix to it.
Absurd.
That's how they'll fix it. Yeah, or you'll get taxed on your taxes, or your digital currency won't be as worth as much, or something. Yeah, they'll make you play the game that you don't want to play. But at least you'll know. At least I appreciate you saying that because I'm almost afraid to mention it because I get beat up when I say I don't vote because I've been around the block. I've done it, and I've done both extremes. I believed in global warming. I didn't. I voted Republican. I voted. I've done. It doesn't change anything.
And was it Einstein's quip? What did he say? If you do something and the effect is the same, and you keep repeating,
Yeah, he says insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing more than once, getting the same result, and expecting it to be different.
and on voting, I mean, I'm a citizen of three countries, and so I refuse to vote in any of those three countries because it's the same thing. But I would just tell people, I think eventually the light wins, truth wins. The
Hmm.
problem is um, we might have to suffer to get through that, and I don't know if the rest of my life I'll be living further in this digital totalitarian dystopia or not. And I think it's just whether we win or not. I always cite there's this excellent quote. It's echoes of the movie 300. Remember that movie 300, Sparta,
No, it's one I haven't seen.
where
I'll make note of it.
yeah, where I think effectively, resistance itself is victory. And Imran Khan, he said some 15 years ago, I have a tweet from him. He's now in jail because he was trying to do the right thing. He said, if victory is certain, even a coward will fight. But real bravery is when one dares to fight when defeat is certain. And so I think just do the right thing and keep speaking truth. It's going to be a lot for them to snuff out all of us who are holding up these ideals of truth, love, and justice. So yeah,
Thanks so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it.
yeah. Thanks for having me.